first group of sessions. We have some really great speakers talking about multimodal issues and also safety and access management. So our first speaker today is Gary Sokolow. Did I say that right, Gary? Okay, want to make sure. He was retired with Florida DOT. He was most recently a senior transportation planner. He has 40 years of experience and worked for FDOT for 30 years, worked with local and regional governments, and then has also worked as a private consultant. He has worked primarily in transportation planning. So thank you so much, and welcome, Gary.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And as I promised in the lightning round, I'm not going to talk about how wonderful everything is and how everybody's going to agree as professionals in the direction that our profession is going and with access management. I also said I am not a complete streets expert, but we at the Florida Department of Transportation have made a commitment to work towards complete streets, and I am a big believer in complete streets. I believe that instituting complete streets into access management and into roadway design and traffic operations is going to make us much better, but it will require some, especially for us older people, to think a little differently. So that's why you'll see that tug of war between safety along with efficiency and speed tugging at each other, because it will, and get used to it. Okay, so back in 2014, Florida Department of Transportation developed and instituted its policy on complete streets. I want to show you probably what I think the most important part of it is that it will be integrated pretty much into everything we do. How many people are working within the guidelines of complete streets where they work? Okay, right. And so, again, being an old person, we had people thinking, oh, this just means we're going to have Parisian boulevards everywhere, and that's never going to work. But that is not what complete streets are about. And so we've had, since 2014, a lot of internal education on this. Throughout the presentation, I will try to have links to some of the things I talk about, since we don't have much time. And if you have not downloaded the PDF version of this from the site that Wisconsin DOT put up for this conference, I highly recommend it. It's been very helpful to me to see some of these presentations. One of the reasons that Florida DOT went and became big believers in complete streets is it wasn't an aesthetic thing at all. It was a matter of saving lives. Florida has been at the top of the list of pedestrian deaths for many, many years. And we had a secretary and continue to have secretaries of transportation that have found this to be something to really work to reduce in our state. But not only Florida, but the day before I came out here, the USA Today said that there's been a 46% rise in pedestrian deaths since 2009. Some of us remember when automobile crashes were going down and automobile fatalities were decreasing, and we felt pretty darn smug about that. Matter of fact, since I'm talking about it, and this is a very intimate group of people here, that's one of the problems I think we have as a profession, is that we are smug, that we do think we know so much. And if you take a look at what has improved our safety, especially for the automobile occupant, over the last 20 years, have been things like how much better cars are made, the crash restraints, making drunk driving something as unacceptable, because I remember when it was different, it was something you could laugh about. It's not a laughing matter anymore. But what have we done as a profession? Have we created better signs? Have we created better pavement markings? I'm not seeing it. And that's why I'm glad that Complete Streets is entering into our vocabulary, and because this is the change I think we need. You know, I'm not saying we haven't done anything for better safety, but we really need to up our game a lot. If the car industry, who's been like so slow to change on gas mileage, can make such a difference on saving automobile occupants' lives, we as a profession, I think, need to do much better. And than just saying, well, I followed the standards. We need to look at our standards. Getting down off the soapbox. How many people here are ITE members? Yeah. One of the great things about ITE is I've always valued my membership in it. I get a lot from talking to the people there, and there's a community bulletin board now where we have discussions about anything, trip generation, designing for bicycles, it goes on. But one that really, a conversation that really stuck in my brain is the one you see on the screen right now. And that is, and this is not me, I didn't write this, that road crash deaths are dropping generally for vehicles, but they are rising for pedestrians and cyclists. And so I think the pendulum has swung too far towards the throughput, and I'll add capacity, level of service, efficiency, and we need to now scale back. Florida DOT, I really make very few apologies. We have, since 1992, had a restrictive median policy that any new multi-lane highways that were built after 1992, if they had a design speed of over 35 or 40 miles an hour, had to have a restrictive median. So 5-lane sections, we still have them in Florida, but they need, they're old. They're really old, or they need to be really small portions at really slow speeds. I think, and that was a roadway design initiative, the restrictive median policy. I wish I could say it was my idea. I happen to feel that our restrictive median policy has helped people in the state of Florida more than the entire access management program. We're part of that restrictive median policy, but if your state does not have something like that, if you're still building 5- and 7-lane sections, getting rid of that will be the first best step you can do to get rid of them, and the 5-lane sections. Now, early on with complete streets, and before that with the traditional planning, I started, because I would Google access management, and I would find these articles that said access management is the enemy of good planning. What? You know, I mean, and I've come to realize what they were talking about, and I'll talk about a little bit more, are the tendency for some people to believe that good access management practices leads to really large city blocks, really long signal spacing, and so I would be attacked, we would be attacked. We're the enemy, we're access management. And I always like to point out, if we were the enemy, I don't think this is something that the people that criticize access management think is friendly. This is bad. Access management can be extremely beneficial to the pedestrian and to cyclists. Now, driveways. This is something, just because I was set in my ways, driveways are for pedestrians too. But if you look in our design standards, the things that we give as in permitting, when we permit a driveway, we sometimes hand people the standard plans for how to build a driveway. How many of them have sidewalks built into them? Ours doesn't, not yet. Gina is working on it though, having sidewalks built into the plans for the typical plans for driveways that we give people. This is Gina Bognani. She is now the access management manager of Florida DOT, and we'll talk about a couple of projects she's working on. But driveways serve pedestrians, and we need to realize it, and we need to design for it. This is an instance pretty close to where I live, where this driveway, they have a sidewalk down one side of it. One side has, but one of the problems is people do use this sidewalk along the street. And there is an active bus stop right here. And when they want to get to the shopping center, they have a choice to make. Do they cross the road? Do they cross the road here and then walk down this sidewalk only to have to cross it again to get to where most of the development is in here? Or do they walk down this road where, and this is a downhill here, where the cars turning in will not see them until it's kind of late? Or will they in fact figure out that maybe they should just walk down the hill if they're able-bodied? And you can see from the worn footpaths that that's what a lot of people are doing. So even putting a sidewalk down one side of the driveway is really not the full answer. So what we need to do as access management professionals is quit thinking just about the automobile and think about the total trip. The total trip from the person coming from the bus stop, from the sidewalk, from the car, in their parking lot to their business. We need to be thinking about that access also. This is a development in the Orlando area, one of our new major convenience gas retailers. And as I think you might be able to see, there is an active bus stop and there, people do take their bikes to the bus stop. Unfortunately, the reason that there's a bike that's locked up there is probably because the headways on the bus route are like 1 hour, and they have an hour to wait. So they lock their bikes, and say they want something cold to drink. There's no really good place for them to get to the 7-Eleven or the Kmart or, the Circle K, so they have to climb over these rocks. And a year or two later, that problem was corrected because our Orlando district is very proactive for pedestrians and cyclists. Matter of fact, they've started collecting traffic count data on cyclists and pedestrians. The first ones to have a really good start at that. This is Publix, which is probably our most popular grocery store, and you can. It's near the beach, and so people can walk across. I think that's A1A. We walk across through the median, and you have a direct access into Publix. It's a good example. Now, again, getting back to permitting, if you're not thinking about the way pedestrians get to the business that you're permitting, you may do something foolish like this. Wow, okay, we didn't make them build a sidewalk. We should have. But heck, we let them build utilities right in the area where we could have done that. So be aware that, again, be thinking about those people that are coming from the sidewalk, the street, the bus, how they're going to get to the development, not just the car. Drive-through facilities. This is another great challenge for us in the access management permitting, and it is complete streets and the people in that specialty that have sensitized me to what's wrong with drive-throughs. And this is a Subway where somebody tried to make a drive-through, but I think there's a design problem there. So moving on to San Francisco area, Oakland, I did find where there was a community that fought a McDonald's. And I'll tell you, the main problem is, and just think about the things that you have permitted, think about the new drive-throughs that you've seen in your community, and everybody wants a drive-through. I mean, Starbucks won't build a Starbucks anymore without a drive-through. And where does that traffic from the drive-through, thank you, go? And it goes right in front of the sidewalk or right behind the sidewalk. So people who want to get there really have to walk across the queue. In addition to that, they even if they go through the parking lot, there's a number of different conflict points they have to go through. So the community in Oakland pretty much forced McDonald's to have a completely different layout, but at the same time they still had their drive-through. Now they have complete direct access from the sidewalk for pedestrians to the restaurant. This is what we want. And that is how it's been redesigned. Again, I have, if you get the PDF, I have links to the newspaper references to this. This is what it looks like today. As you can see, there are 2 direct ways for pedestrians to get right into the McDonald's. It is still very well served for the people who want to use the drive-through. As I looked up different designs for places that do have drive-throughs, this is a Walgreens with a drive-through, and though it doesn't get in the way of the major access for the pedestrian, this is a Chick-fil-A also. Direct access from the sidewalk. This is what we want. Signal spacing, something that we thought that was always the greatest thing in the world, is to have really long signal spacing. We can get cars to go very fast. This is an unnamed road in an unnamed area of Florida, and it carries, it's a 6-lane road with a median. It carries over 50,000 vehicles a day. It carries almost as much as a freeway. It has some side street connectivity. It's not all bad. And the median that's in there is good for safety for people trying to get across and for the driver too. The half-mile signal spacing, however, makes it really hard for people who get on the bus in the morning and they need to get off the bus at night and go home. So they're not going to walk to the traffic signal. They're going to go across, and we need to understand that. We need to serve those people. The other thing that Florida DOT did is recognize that land use context is important in access management decisions. This is our current access management standard table. When we developed it in 1988, we basically had 2 land use types. We had the generally developing or undeveloped, where we would have high standards, and we had the generally developed, where we had lower standards. Brad Strader came up, he was the first one that I saw trying to combine access management and context zones together. And Florida DOT has worked to come up with its own context zones. We have our own context zone designations. And to try and get access management to work better with the context zones, DOT is working on an access management guide which will combine our driveway handbook and median handbooks together. And so this is under development right now. And we are, DOT is working on, for every context zone, the relative importance of the different modes, and also what are the considerations for driveway design and driveway placement in each of the context zones. For instance, this is the rural town. I'm not, this is all being developed, but in the rural town is very similar to a downtown in a big city. And so you'll see some of the same sort of guidance. You don't want to have a lot of driveways across the sidewalk. And so we're trying to develop, or DOT is trying to develop guidance for every context zone based on the importance of each mode, including deliveries and freight. And with that, I will open it up to questions if you have. Did I see a hand? I will be around, so if you have questions to ask me. Oh, what? Yeah.
Do you find that the size of a commercial driveway opening has an effect on the safety of the pedestrian crossing on the sidewalk on that?
Yes, indeed.
What's typical?
What was the question?
Oh, I'm sorry. The question is, it was do driveways across a sidewalk are where there is, significant pedestrian activity, is that a safety problem? Is that the question?
Well, what's
The size, you're speaking of the
size
width.
Yes.
Any would be not optimal, and the wider would be less optimal. That's the best I can do.
We wanted to design a driveway that makes the car slow down, rather than with a wide angle, just turning, making a right turn. So we want them to slow down, so we're designing for those type of driveways.
Right.
Yes.
The-
Narrower and, it makes a big difference.
If we have driveways across sidewalks, we want the driver to know they're entering a different environment. They're entering an environment in which pedestrians are present.
Do you have a standard specification for different driveway sizes for different zoning?
That's what we're working on. That's what Gina is working on. That's all part of the access management guide. Oh, the question was, do we have actual standards for the types of driveways to be built in these context zones? And my answer is that is something that we are still working on. I was working with Gina on this with our roadway design people before I left, and Gina is still working with roadway design to have guidance for every context zone on the design of driveways. And it's not just driveways. Our roadway design division is trying to have guidance for almost every design feature for each of our context zones, knowing that traffic signals, pedestrian crossings, median openings for cars and pedestrians will change based on the context zone. So not an easy task, but they're working on it.
I think we have time for one more question, if there are any other questions. Yes.
I just wonder what you ended up doing in the location where you had half-mile spacing of the signals.
We're still trying to determine. The question is, what are we doing with the half-mile signal spacing? It's funny that we looked at the possibility of putting in pedestrian signals that were timed to the automobiles. So we could have pedestrians crossing without getting in the way of that great platooning and then ITE community guidebook said, yeah, we tried that, but if you think about organizing the pedestrian crossing with the platooning, what you end up with are people pushing the button and then waiting for 45 seconds or a minute, and the chances are there's going to be a gap or two, and they're just going to go across. And so we're talking about just a pedestrian signal, and then so what's happened there is that the automobiles would stop and there'd be no pedestrians because they've already given up and ran across. So we're looking at different ways to handle this. Again, we're at the beginning, and let me also say, maybe having cars go as fast as they can down that corridor is not the epitome of what we want, and that's sometimes what it gets down to. I would get on my soapbox and keep starting, but I'll stop.
Thank you very much, Gary. Appreciate it.